How are you, George?
I am spent.
You know, I would think I have covered a couple of Comicons in my day, and when I see people running around, especially a guy in your position, because to be honest, I mean, it might exist without you, but it isn't what it is without somebody from Star Trek. And George Takei is, in fact, Star Trek to a lot of people. Would you agree?
Thank you for saying that, and thank you for that applause. But, you know, I wouldn't be George Takei without all of you. It's your dedication to the show and to all the various generations of Star Trek that's made Star Trek into this incredible 46-year-old phenomenon. So thank you all for all your support and undying love.
Let me just say this, without you, I'd be talking to myself. So now we're all cool. Now, George, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to open up the floor to questions. So I'm a bit nervous. It's been a long time since I've been nervous. You put a microphone in my hand, I'm comfortable.
Yes.
But here's what I want to make sure to do. I'm a huge fan of yours, and I want to make sure not to use up any of the questions that these lovely young people might have for you. But you have been in sci-fi, much like the country song go, I was into country before country was cool. You were into sci-fi decades before Star Trek, were you not?
Well, to be frank, I read people like Ray Bradbury,
sure,
but I wouldn't say I was into sci-fi.
Then who was it that dubbed the voices in the 50s in Rodan? Yes. Score one for Bonaducci right there.
Yes, I did do the English dubbing on this Japanese movie, Rodan. And then there was another one that...
Dig that Rodan, you guys. I mean, talk about your Comic-Con. This is... Captain Kirk was a twingle in his mother's arm.
And another movie, Japanese sci-fi movie that I dubbed into English, they later called Godzilla. So... in that sense, I was involved with sci-fi back then.
Now, did you actually translate from Japanese into English, or just dub?
I did not do the translating. We had writers who did the translating, and we did the dubbing. However, some of the translations that the writers gave us didn't work. It wouldn't fit the lip movement.
Well, that can I tell you the truth? That has not changed.
No.
I like saying this a great deal, and it makes it sound a little closer than we actually are. But I'm relatively good friends with Jackie Chan. And this is now 2012, and I'll still see Jackie's movies, and I'll see better than our kung fu. So they haven't really tracked up with that kind of dubbing, but now it's 2012. Did you ever suspect that you would still be adored by these, legions of fans? If I'm not mistaken, you have 1.3 million friends on Facebook?
Believe it or not, I still don't believe it. It's amazing. But you know, when I first started with the pilot of Star Trek, we knew we had a quality show. The writing was all there. The ideas were all there. And I was chatting with Jimmy Doohan, and I said, I smell quality with this show. It is going to be a show that we're going to be proud of.
Jimmy Doohan, who would play Scotty.
Jimmy Doohan. But then I added on, I don't think we'll last too long. Good shows don't last on television.
Which would explain why the Partridge Family was on longer than Star Trek.
Yes.
Good shows don't last that long. But it was a brilliant show. Let me ask you that, and I think we should turn it right over to the audience. For 46 years of success, wouldn't you have think mathematically you would have had to have bigger success? Star Trek, by today's standards, forget the audience members because there's so many channels, but by today's standards, Star Trek was not a hit.
No, it wasn't. At the beginning of each episode, we announced that we were boldly going on a 5-year mission. Well, we met Klingons, we met Andorians, all sorts of adversaries, but we didn't think that those adversaries would overcome us. What we didn't know was that we had adversaries called NBC programming executives. They aborted us after 3 seasons.
So it did run 3 seasons. Can you imagine? We're all here 46 years later for a show I would think most of us could probably still do dialogue from, and it was only on 3 seasons. We could quote the show, and most of us a little bit better than Shatner. That's just a personal opinion. No big deal. Don't get upset with me. But and I'm going to turn it over right after to you. Do you think there's any truth to the curse that nobody that had a fake foreign accent on the show went on to the success of the people who did not have Jimmy Doohan, who played Scotty, and the man who played Chekhov, has not had the kind of success that the other characters on Star Trek have had.
Well, particularly Jimmy. He's no longer with us.
That's, well, depending on how you look at things, that's either the big win or the big loss. All right, who's got a question for George Takei? It's fairly dark, so you should make your presence known by screaming, bursting into flames, whatever you'd like to do.
While we wait for a question, George, how do you feel about the latest Star Trek renditions?
The J.J. Abrams movies, I thought it was a terrific movie. I mean, it really had pace and rhythm and action, you know, and it had to be done with a younger cast. All that running that they did in the corridors of the Enterprise, I can't imagine Bill Shatner running. I mean, I'm horrified at that picture.
Say your praises for stun, and then just let him go. Yes, your question over here.
I have 2 questions regarding Allegiance.
Yes.
So first of all, did you...
Where are you?
I'm over here.
Right there, George.
Oh, there you are.
Yes. So did you write it? And 2, are you singing in it? If you are, can you sing us something?
Well, it began in a prophetic way. When Brad and I are in New York, we're in the theater almost every night. We are theater buffs. We're dedicated theater buffs. And one night, well, there are kindred souls here. One night we got to the theater kind of early. We sat down and we were talking about the play that we had seen the night before. And there were 2 guys sitting in front of us. And one of them recognized my voice. He turned around and said, you're George Takei, aren't you? And we, chit-chatted for a while. And then the play began. And during the intermission, we chatted some more. We thought they were nice guys, very friendly. The next night, we went to see In the Heights, a musical about the Puerto Ricans in New York, living in Washington Heights. And we arrived at the theater. This time the theater was fairly full, but again, not in front of us, but in the same row that we were in were those 2 same guys, about 4 or 5 seats away from us. And these seats were occupied, so we just kind of waved to them. And we said, what a coincidence. You know, same guys, 2 nights in a row. And then the play began. And if you know the play, near the end of the first act, the father has a song called Inuti, or Useless. He wants to do so much for his daughter, but because of the economic conditions and some of the barriers that Puerto Ricans face in New York, he couldn't do all that he wanted to do for the daughter that he loved so much. And he sings this song, Useless. And for some odd reason, that reminded me of the time that we were in the Arkansas internment camp during the Second World War. And it reminded me of my father, who wanted to do so much for us, for the kids, myself, my younger brother, and my baby sister. And it got to me so much that I'm a softie at tearjerkers. I started to cry. And then wouldn't you know, the act would end and the lights would immediately come on blazing and the intermission would start. And I was, wiping my face when the 2 guys came over to chit-chat, and they saw me, wiping the tears off my face. And he said, why did that song strike you so profoundly? And I told him about the internment camp. And the guy who recognized my voice the night before, an Asian American, Jay Kuo is his name, said, the story of the internment sounds like something that would be important to do as a drama. on the stage. And I said, well, I'm planning on writing the last part of the first third of my autobiography as a television drama. He said, no, it'd make a great musical. And it turned out he was a composer-lyricist. And so we chatted just briefly during the intermission. And then, the second act began, and we went back to our seats. But after the play, we went out for drinks together, and we talked about it some more. And he was very persuasive. It turns out he's a composer-lyricist who had a musical on in San Francisco at that time. And we talked about the idea of doing a story on the internment as a musical. And so we decided to meet the following night for dinner instead of going to the theater. And we talked about it some more. And we got really excited about that idea. But those two guys were from San Francisco, we're from Los Angeles. We went back. But I started an email correspondence with Jay, and we sketched out a drama. And then about 2 weeks later, he sent a song over the internet. I mean, I'm of the radio generation, and I'm still astounded by all that can be done online. And the song that he sent over was titled Allegiance, and it was about the father wanting to do so much for his children in an internment camp. And there I was, seated at my computer, bawling away again. And it really affected me. And so from that, we started developing it. And the other guy happens to be a writer as well. And so he and Jay collaborated in the writing. I gave them guidance on the factual stories of the events of the internment. The story is fictional. I was too young to really understand the events as a 5-year-old child.
I just was reading about this because I find the internment camps a very interesting part of American history. But in an article you recently did, you said, when I would run off from my camp to use the latrine at night, I thought it was very nice of the soldiers to light my way. And you had no idea, because you were only 5, they were just making sure you didn't escape.
Right.
Now, when you go to talk about it, the question was about a musical George Takei is writing about, called Allegiance, about his youth spent, his very early youth spent in an internment camp. Do you think you can take a topic that is, in my opinion, not only dark, but a fairly shameful time in American history, and make it into a musical and have people standing up and cheer? And the second part of that question is, I just want to tell you this. 2 guys meeting up with 2 guys in a musical theater a couple nights in a row, not big of a coincidence. So do you think you can make it into a fun night out?
I maintain it was prophetic. It was prophecy. Somebody was pulling the strings for us to meet together.
I believe we have more questions on this side of the room.
Well, you asked them something about the dark story.
Yeah, do you think you can make that into people leaving the theater going, I mean, obviously you can make it into people thinking, that was an amazing night out. The musical
let me cite a few examples.
Please.
Les Miserables, great Broadway hit, is about the French Revolution. Oppressed people, being subjugated to horrors of the French government and the revolution. That's a dark story. Let me cite another example. Miss Saigon, about the Vietnam War. Let me cite an even darker story. Sweeney Todd. A murderous barber who slits the throat of his customers and then sells the body to his neighbor lady, who's a baker, who bakes the meat of those people into meat pies, and they become very popular in London. They sell like meat pies.
And you guys thought that the one from Hunger Games was going to be the gory battle. All right, now let's go for that question over here. And by the way, a more than sufficient answer on that question. Thank you very much. Question over here, please.
Hi. I was wondering, going back